Before talking about transit tech, I want to acknowledge that digital technology is not a cure-all for the world's problems, especially not all the challenges facing public transit. I've spent most of my life working on consumer-oriented websites, digital products in the private sector. More recently, I've been working in government. Not too long ago, I co-founded a nonprofit, Transit Ops, with Paul Swartz and Siobhan Cunningham, to make open source tech more actionable and sustainable for public transit agencies as a means of improving rider experiences. In this talk, I'm primarily concerned with how transit agencies communicate with their riders, whether that is a fixed schedule or real-time vehicle arrival time prediction. Tech is a significant element of rider communication. Digital information goes through many steps involving numerous systems as it eventually gets to a rider on a digital sign, an app, or an agency website. We've known for a long time that accurate, timely, easy to understand information improves the experience of riding public transit by giving riders more control. Simply put, people can make better decisions when they know about a delay, what a trip will cost, and whether they can get a seat. But unfortunately, we also know that riders often don't get the quality of information that they deserve. Why transit agencies or tech companies and what to do about it, that's my title. And my argument is that transit agencies should embrace the good parts of tech companies to make public transit more viable and competitive with other mobility alternatives. Yes, many tech companies may be evil, even if they once had a slogan like, "Don't be evil." But what many tech companies do well, though, is listen to the voice of customers. Among tech companies and even tiny unfunded startups, there are mature and well-understood methodologies for discovering what people want, rapid delivery of features to attempt to meet user needs, methods for measuring feedback and utilization, and an iterative approach to improving digital experiences. Let's be honest, these are rare qualities in the public sector. For example, we don't see too many product managers working in government, but we should. In this talk, I will identify obstacles to meeting customer expectations with technology and make specific recommendations. All right, part one, there's 4 parts. Generative culture. You can only meet rider expectations if your existing organizational culture allows you to. Recently, actually, I was talking to a transit agency about their real-time arrival time predictions, or actually their lack of them. They run a bus service. They don't currently have real-time predictions. What they pretty much do is just do a little math. So if the schedule says that a bus is going to arrive at noon and that's 10 minutes away, they say, oh, it's going to be here in 10 minutes. Obviously, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And when we were talking about it, one of the sort of senior leaders said, well, riders actually don't complain about this issue. And I really couldn't say it in the moment, but at the time I thought to myself, well, this could be a cultural thing, right? Perhaps this information isn't like bubbling up to this level, or maybe riders are so accustomed to unhelpful information that they aren't actively complaining about it because they're used to it, but it doesn't mean that they don't care. So one of the remarkable things I think about working in transit tech is meeting other technology folks from various agencies who do incredible work for riders under the radar. In a culture that doesn't support innovation, they had to become like transit data ninjas to make progress, but there are limits to how much you can get done in the shadows. The ironic thing is that most people associate government with bureaucratic culture, but generally speaking, there are 3 main types of organizational culture: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. If government culture were bureaucratic, that would often be an improvement, as government culture tends to be pathological and power-oriented. For example, people get in trouble for talking about issues that are true, collaboration is effectively discouraged, and the status quo gets prioritized ahead of trying anything new. To succeed in tech, you must personally model and organizationally promote a performance-oriented culture where people get trained to point out problems and are encouraged to build bridges with other departments and agencies and implement novel solutions. Innovating in tech requires the willingness to look foolish sometimes if it means making progress towards meeting customer needs. Part 2, product mindset. A product mindset is the opposite of being solution-oriented. In government, we often see that every tech role is occupied by an implementation specialist. So when stakeholders come to them with specific problems, the response tends to be a proposed solution or project plan that makes sense to technology folks. Product mindset goes beyond cataloging a detailed enumeration of business requirements and starts by recognizing that we rarely just know exactly what riders need. Even from a solutions perspective, the absolute worst problem that ever happens isn't going over budget or severely missing a deadline. It's getting to the point of saying you're done, only to realize that you built the wrong thing, and it would be better to scrap it than to ship it. In transit tech, we need to apply a rigorous discovery process with the correct methodology to understand and prioritize what work to do. Sometimes this could be like deep thinking. Other times it's user research to tease out valid findings. It's easy to underestimate the challenges of uncovering the precise way that technology can improve rider experiences. Sort of an anecdote, when I first started working in transit tech, I had heard, or I think I had received some kind of a customer support issue around the smell in certain elevators. And certain elevators were being used as bathrooms by some folks, and this was an issue that riders were rightly concerned about. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't know, is this a technology problem? Maybe this is related to homelessness or like bigger societal issues? How is this really like a transit agency problem aside from like, some kind of regular cleaning? But somebody in the group looked into it deeper, and they found that there was a urine detection technology, like a new sensor. You could put it in an elevator and see what the issue could be. If you detect it, in theory, you could send a message more quickly to the people who could take care of it, and it would lead to a better overall experience for riders. In this instance, actually, they did the pilot, they got the funding, they measured it, they got a lot of data. I would say that the tech isn't quite up to speed for this purpose, but it was great in a sense to see a group was sort of like willing to do something new, to measure it, to see how it goes. And if it didn't work out, then we won't pursue it. But that's, we need more of this because a lot of things could potentially work out. Part 3, experienced teams. While working in government, I've seen remarkably successful technology projects and massive failures. The successful projects required the collaboration of many skilled people across several job functions, motivated to benefit riders using their deep knowledge of transit operations and modern technology practices. I think probably in a lot of agencies, we saw that during the pandemic, there was a call for more data around the occupancy level or crowding on buses. This is data that I guess transit agencies have had for a long time, but it wasn't something that they were providing to riders in real time. And it's really a major obstacle, right? Because it involves the buses, the tech on buses, where this data is stored, accessing it, understanding it, putting it into a different format so that it could be published to maps and apps and things like that. Even once you have the data, doing some type of quality check to see how accurate it is, maybe even creating some kind of algorithm to improve the quality of the data if there's some kind of drift. It's honestly, I mean, I was so impressed with what agencies were able to do during the pandemic to get this data to riders. However, there's also the failed side. And I think the failed projects have mostly had one thing in common, which is well-meaning government professionals were completely in over their heads in understanding and managing the risks of working with a third-party technical service provider on a complex project. These vendors exploited transit agencies for maximum compensation, for minimal, low quality, and often incomplete work. In my 6 years working in transit tech, I've been on the side of finishing a number of delivered projects that didn't work. I've seen this many times. Amazingly, if you're a technical person who's ever encountered these vendors, you will immediately notice that they also lack technical competency. After all, it would be sort of a win-win if they did good work, but they rarely do. As a result, I actually think that these companies themselves have a vicious cycle, as talented technology workers don't choose to work for companies that systematically underperform to the detriment of taxpayers, the broader public, and transit riders. Most technology workers today choose a job with purpose. I say this to drive home this point. Transit agencies need in-house technical competency. There's no way around having these in-house skills to perform, oversee, and manage the risk of technical projects. Having in-house technical skill, it's more cost-effective, it's more agile, it's more sustainable. But how do you get there? Agencies that lack the technical competency to differentiate between, let's say, candidates who have modern skills and who are faking it are at a bit of a disadvantage. But here's the thing. I think your superpower as a transit agency is offering the most meaningful technology opportunity job on the market. People want to do meaningful work. And really, what's more significant than making public transit more viable for the public, frequently shipping technology that impacts people's daily lives, and improving the relationship people have to government service by making public transit the most immersive way people encounter government service better. People from the private sector are used to like cushy jobs, catered lunches, high salaries, ping pong tables, but they spend their time trying to trap other people into seeing more advertising. You could level with people. Working in government will be the worst employment experience you've ever had, but you will do the most meaningful work you've ever done. Talented people will accept this challenge, and these are the people that we need to work on complex transit data issues. Part 4, default to open. When a technology company itself has a technical need, using existing open source technology is the first consideration, followed by maybe a build versus buy analysis. When an existing open source product fits the bill, it's clear that choosing a proprietary option would be sort of a self-inflicted vendor lock-in, as building something would be sort of like reinventing the wheel. By now, everybody knows that open source is cost effective, it's adaptable, vendor neutral, and typically more secure than proprietary options. But what about a business case where there's something new or unique enough that it warrants custom software development? The bane of many transit agencies' existence. Should you choose to contract with a third party, you should structure the procurement to mandate open source code, adherence to existing data standards such as GTFS and ODS, and ensure that your organization owns all the application data and that the application itself runs on your own infrastructure according to your specifications. Collectively, these controls cover the 4 horsemen of vendor lock-in: no access to code, no access to data, no operational access, and lack of interoperability. It's crazy to think that we have like third parties who operate software on behalf of agencies that are customer critical, that are safety impacting, and sometimes they don't or can't apply security updates, or their systems contain significant defects, but transit agencies have no leverage or recourse to deal with them. Sometimes the vendor managers within an agency actually walk on eggshells when they're dealing with these third parties because they hold all the cards. You might say, well, can you just pay them more or something like that? But it's not that simple. Sometimes vendors actually refuse to make changes, or they offer a multi-year timeline to make minor changes, or they say that an entire system must be recreated at the full cost when they're presented with making some sort of minor change. Beyond these behaviors, these companies, surprise, surprise, they go out of business sometimes, or the company that they hired to actually do the work goes out of business, or they shift out of public transit. I guess I mean that, like, even if you have a vendor who's really nice and they seem to care about this work, vendor lock-in is still something that happens. In a perfect world, we hire great vendors and we stay with them, but because we choose to do so, not because we're stuck. This is, just to keep beating this drum, this is not unlike the right to repair for smartphones, right? Instead of buying a replacement for $1,000 phone, maybe I just want to spend 10 minutes fixing it myself with a $29 kit I could buy online. What if the vendor says no, though? They don't want to do open source. They don't want to be interoperable. No problem. The market for software development is highly commoditized and much larger than you would think from the sort of usual cast of characters that we see working for transit agencies. There is a digital agency out there that values open source and making government service work for the public, and they want your money too. Okay, I'll move on to something else. What if you decide to build it in-house? Does it matter then if you choose open source or not? I would say that it does, as would the United States Digital Service, which recommends an approach called default to open, which says that your code should be open if it isn't required to be closed for some legalistic reason or whatever it might be. If you think about it, the code that we write in government, it's often taxpayer funded. Maybe a taxpayer wants to look at it. Perhaps they want to submit a fix. This is pretty uncommon, but it's possible. I did hear an agency actually that was thinking of commercializing their code and selling it to other transit agencies. In that case, yes, they would choose a proprietary license. I don't think it really went anywhere, but it was kind of hard not to think at the time that if you're not sort of amazing at the transit service part of being a transit agency, it might not be a great idea to be a software vendor as well. But anyway, as we can see from this conference itself, transit agencies and the people who work in them are sort of like a single and deeply connected community. When one agency publishes open source, it welcomes the possibility that another agency can learn from this code, apply things that they learn to their use cases. They could even co-invest and share the cost burden of future developments. When transit agencies choose open source, they make technology more sustainable for all agencies and potentially benefit all riders. All right. We're almost at the last stop here. I've mentioned the word risk many times in this talk, and I want to be clear, like I'm not advocating that agencies or people who work there should be reckless, right? I'm just saying that when you have the right culture in place and you're listening to the rider's voice and you have an experienced technical team, you can take calculated risks to improve the experience of riding public transit. You can take risks that are worth taking. For example, if you don't have a department in your organization that can do product discovery work and user research, take the risk, start one. If you aren't attracting really skilled technology folks to your team, figure out what the issue is. If procurement doesn't put your agency in control of technology, it's time to get some leverage. There are many resources. For example, the Mobility Data Interoperability Principles, MDIP. They're doing great work related to interoperability, procurement, and transit data standards. My organization, Transit Ops, we're proud to be part of MDIP. Our organization is a nonprofit focusing on helping agencies benefit from existing and new open source technology. You might be surprised, but there are many advanced open source transit tech products that already exist today. However, unless agencies are empowered to address the quality of rider communication and are willing to try something new, it might not make a difference. Anyway, thank you so much for your time today. I've been ignoring questions, so I don't know if there are any, but that is my talk.